Okay, so hopefully this is working. Before we start, I need to sort out my audio because I'm not actually sure if it sounds okay. Let me just try and hear. Let's see if anyone's watching. And I can hear myself obviously on my own video, but I want to make sure I sound okay before I go too in depth. Could be a lot nicer, couldn't it? But that was a more professional channel. I'd have thought of this out before I went live, wouldn't I? But I think if I just speak up, it should be all right. Okay, so hopefully turn up a little bit more. Right, so I'm just gonna have to hope that it doesn't um, mess up too much. But onto the actual topic I was hoping to focus on. Today, I'm going to be looking at a response to a thread I did about fascism, and about how opposition to Nazism is not at its best when you're using the same points the Nazis made. So, for instance, you can look at how elements of Nazism are found in rhetoric we're seeing today in society, be it anti-immigration or anti-LGBTQ, or many of the other categories in which Nazism pervades and invades our societal discourse. Um, and naturally, the thread received and garnered some more negative uh, attention. A lot of the reception was pretty impressive, and it's got a lot of likes. So I'm pleased about, but naturally, it's a political opinion on social media, so it garnered some attention from people perhaps unhappy that some of their views were being included in this list. And yeah, yes, naturally going to make you unhappy that someone's saying, "Oh, well, you're not really opposing Nazis that well if you hold this view." But true, it still is. You're still gonna be ultimately aiding the Nazis, even if you don't intend to, by holding a view that the far right and Nazism wishes to push upon the world, be it one of anti-trans or saying LGBT rights have uh, gone too far or anything. The differing topics and areas in which Nazism can use you as a pushing factor towards their ascension. You don't have to be openly waving around a swastika to be doing good work for the far right. And pretending otherwise is naive and ignorant of the ideas and situation we face. But specifically today, I wanted to look at a specific thread about or in relation to my initial thread. And I think it will serve as a good example of just how dangerous it is to, take this. Oh, well, I'm doing it. Not, I'm opposing stuff fine, and I'm not going to change anything. How dangerous it can be, and on top of that, how dangerous it can be to go into any sort of criticism uh, of your ideas with a I'm right, you're wrong attitude. Um, and then additionally to that, hopefully demonstrating how a number of these opinions do contribute and benefit to far right control of discourse and control of conversation. Anyhow, I'm going to try and use screen share to do this. Hopefully, it's not going to ruin or look poor on the screen, but I'm looking at the image now. So hopefully it won't be too bad, but we'll give it a go. Give me 1 second as I try and work out how to do this. Um, right, you should be able to see that on your screen now. Um, you can see the full image looks like this. It's a nice big. Essentially, I've got my thread here and the other thread next to it. And yeah, it's as a return to S-Man speak. And whilst I have interacted with him before, um, but I feel as though his thread sort of illustrates the problems with many of the people who just say, "Oh, I oppose Nazis," and then don't do anything beyond that. Um, so yeah, we're going to have a look at what I said, what he said in response, and then take it from there and see how what has been said by right-wing people isn't really that effective. So to start, my thread begins with the open statement of saying you oppose Nazis is pointless if you, and then there's lots of bullet points which highlight the things which contradict the idea that you stand opposed to the Nazis, contradict the idea that you're in firm opposition to the Nazis because of believing things that the Nazis and the far right wish to pose on society. So we'll start with a nice basic one. Your opposition to Nazis is pointless if you think rounding up undocumented immigrants is justified. Now, this is a fairly basic thing. A person, regardless of who they are or what nation they're from, is not illegal. But a person trying to survive in this world, as we all are, we're all the same, all trying to survive conditions that capitalism places on us, all trying to survive the brutality of a free market that cares for profit more than it does for people. Um, so, a person born in Mexico sneaking across the border to try and make their life better, that's not someone we should be condemning. That's not someone we should be saying, no, you need to leave. We should instead be pointing our ire and our anger towards a system that fails them, a system that has left their country poorer thanks to the dominance of capitalists in the first world, and force them to have to try and enter a wealthier nation illegally. We shouldn't be blaming people for trying to go against laws which are inherently flawed. Um, and ultimately, you need to be valuing people over a flawed and deeply unpleasant and inhumane law system. And in response to this, we slide across. S-Man says illegal immigrants broke the law, therefore deporting them is fine. No Nazism here. That's not something which we should be condoning. If you think about what is being said here, they broke the law, so they just get kicked out. No stopping and thinking about whether that law is justified in the first place. Thinking, oh well, is it really good to be having just a border which says, oh, you can't enter because you're a different nationality? What is nationality? What makes an American different to a Mexican? What makes them different? What makes any person different to another person other than the constructed nationality that we've made? All human life is important and it's a valuable thing inherently by itself. And the idea that we need to create these divisions between ourselves over such things as oh, you're from a different nation, and let's kick them out and bar them from attaining a better life, that's barbaric. That is the logic that the far right held. The idea that people could just become lesser through their nationality, but the idea that people of a specific nation held importance over others based upon nothing but the fact they were from that nation. And doing this, I think this idea of the quote unquote illegality of a person inherently, they weren't traveling the right papers, which you need to be quite wealthy to attain in the first place. That plays into a lot of the rhetoric you see about white people in America and in their relation to non-white people. How supposedly the world is being invaded, or what white areas are being invaded by non-white people. This idea of cracking down on illegal immigration, plays into that theory, that nonsense. Um, and yeah, I'm not trying to say that before I go any further, S-Man speaks. I'm sure he means well. He's not exactly he's not a Nazi or anything, but nonetheless, this statement that helps the far right, that helps people on the far right push their rhetoric about immigrants, because illegal immigrants is just the first step. It's easy to appeal to naive right wingers and say, "Ah, these people, they're taking this and that, and they need to be kicked out because of the amount of dehumanization they receive. Oh, they're illegal, therefore we can treat them like animals, like we're seeing ICE do to them at the moment. We can bar them from attaining basic human conditions and rights, and that is one step along the trail." Um, and yeah, you've got to consider that the far right don't particularly intend to stop at legal immigrants. And once you take a first step along that, you go on to further kind of actions against all immigrants, all people considered foreign to the idea of a nation. Anyway, next point. Saying you oppose Nazis is pointless if you think trans and non-binary people aren't valid or scientifically correct. A basic thing here. It's just a basic fact that trans people and non-binary people are just who they say they are. And yeah, it's pretty hideous that we still have to discuss this really when there's a plethora of evidence and research dedicated to showing this. And S-Man responds with, "Not Nazism, just common knowledge. Yes, it's common knowledge that it's trans people and non-binary people are somehow wrong." Now, if you can't see the clear fault in S-Man's logic and the subsequent link to the far right and Nazism in this lack of logic from S-Man, then the problem fundamentally lies with you, essentially. But as we all know, Nazis were, anti-LGBTQ and firmly opposed the idea that there was anything beyond heterosexuality, and obviously had a biological order that they firmly stuck to, and literally burned down a research center and destroyed research about LGBTQ people, including trans people. And yeah, it's not accurate to say that the Nazis were the first people to do this, but it was a fundamental part of their idea. This conservative right wing idea that there's a specific hierarchy and order to biology that has to fit with this rigid traditionalist view of men and women, and there's disregarding of the science and the actual complexity of the human condition. So for someone to say that it's common knowledge that trans people and non-binary people are scientifically wrong, that is directly playing into a Nazi view of LGBTQ people, and by considering them incorrect, it leads to the eventual process which removes their rights, which invalidates them as recognized people. Like if someone like S-Man, thinks, oh, that they're not valid, then that's one step along to having hospitals not recognizing them as legitimate things, being unable to attain the treatment and medication they need, being seen as discriminatory, being seen as able to be discriminated against because if no one recognizes their position as a trans person. So what could there be to discriminate against? It all starts from this idea that their very condition of being is incorrect, and subsequently for someone to say that these people are all invalid, and it's common knowledge as well. That shows you directly that there are major problems with fascism in many of right wing people, and that it's dangerous for us to be assuming that we're void of a problem when people with such heinous attitudes like this exist in society. Saying you oppose Nazis is pointless if you think Western imperialism upon the third world is good. Another important one. We should be campaigning against the idea that Western nations are superior and thus able to exert themselves over the rest of the world. And in response, S-Man says, we'd save money by not involving ourselves in pointless BS. Um, I mean, it's technically correct. Yeah, we would save money and economic integrity by avoiding these conflicts and avoiding these decisions. But I think it lacks the answer given here sort of lacks the nuance and accuracy as to why we should oppose it. Like, it's not just about saving money; it's about opposing the idea that Western nations are, have the right to impose themselves over the rest of the world. The idea that America can be world police, and ultimately, it has to be more than just we save ourselves money. And indeed, it ignores the actual cause of why the events happen, which is ultimately capitalism. Where countries like America see opportunities to exert power over the peoples of other nations to extract oil or to suppress an anti-capitalist movement. Like, they don't just do it because they're feeling malicious or evil. They do it because as resistance, you've got more capital. You attain a higher position in society. You have more power. You have more wealth. And when you can modify entire nations and exert power over entire lands and regions, that's going to move yourself into a more powerful position. That's how numerous members of the Bush administration, for instance, are incredibly wealthy now because they disregarded the freedom and autonomy of the Middle East to impose American control of a region. And for all you say, oh, we've saved money, it's it's made lots of people much richer, including the members of the former administrations of the United States. So whilst this is it's correct, it's at least good that he is able to recognise that imperialism and foreign policy needs reform and massive overhauls. It still doesn't change that the sort of root of this idea is flawed. Next up, can you oppose Nazis? The point of this, do you think police enforcement and mass incarceration are okay? So firstly, S-Man says having cops isn't bad. The idea that you can support a police force, the exertion of a class of people onto the workers and onto the people itself is inherently flawed. It takes power away from society and hands it to an elite class of people. You then have the power to force the law onto people who target those who are unable to fight back. And it's all very well saying, oh, they uphold the law. But the primary function is to protect the wealthy, the capital, the private property, which is why in America you see the police focusing on poorer people and exerting their power over the workers more so than they do actually uphold the law. Just look at how many innocent people die at the hands of the police. Just look at how much of a problem there is at the hands of the police enforcement, and ultimately this idea of a police force, a force you need to exert onto people, is one that can be found in fascism, in Nazism. The idea that there is an order and that the people need to be suppressed, that capitalism needs to be protected by a force of people, as we see today. And again, I'm not trying to say today is Nazism or anything, but the SA, the idea, the SS, the secret police, all these ideas come from the fact that the wealthy needed to exert power over the workers, and their anxiety and insecurity about the struggling conditions of capitalism led to the formation of a oppressive, authoritarian police force. And today, whilst it obviously isn't on that level, we do still see a police force that suppresses, worker movements, that destroys and often ruins and kills many lives across the country, that is riddled with white supremacists and fascists. it's literally under federal investigation, or was, and there's been clear problems with the far right in police forces for quite a long time now. As for mass incarceration, he says mass incarceration proves that the Republicans aren't fiscally conservative. Now, I'm not really sure what he's trying to say here. The idea that fiscally conservative means anything really beyond terrible economic and social policies. But ultimately, mass incarceration allows a capitalist to get cheaper labor or even free labor from a populace without having to necessarily write in laws. So you see the police target poor areas and black areas, arrest people, them unable to post bail or get out of their incarceration, and thus end up working for a pound, not a pound, $1 an hour for a company. And subsequently, this clear exploitation, almost child slavery, becomes a way for capitalists to make more money. So for S-Man to say, oh well, it's not it's not conservative, is an outright lie. It directly comes from capitalism to imprison people to make more money. That's something that has benefited capitalists all the way. It's what makes America have such a wealthy 1%. And linking it to back to the Nazis and the far right. Once again, it's about controlling the populace. It's about authoritarianism. The idea that you can exert your power over the populace and the workers through threats of prison, for one, through imprisoning someone based on the conditions you've placed in society. You've made a deeply unfair system in capitalism. You made a awful free market, an awful free market, and then when people have to turn to crime, or even just exist as the wrong color or whatever, they get imprisoned and made to work as a de facto slave. It's very much the case that mass incarceration and police enforcement, they're examples of authoritarian control. They give credence to the idea that people need to be controlled by a higher power, a higher order, and that's exactly what fascists want. Anyway, that's our first tweet done. Next post. It's a little bit wonky, so you have to forgive me for my sloppy editing here. Okay, so you're opposing Nazis is pointless if you think LGBTQ rights / movement has gone too far. Yeah, absolutely. That you need to be on board with the idea that queer rights haven't reached the peak of their movement because we got gay marriage. I mean that all our problems are eradicated. And S-Man says in response, I don't think LGBT has gone too far. They are running out of legitimate concerns. Anti-discrimination is one bad thing among others. Now, the idea that they're running out of legitimate concerns is just utter rubbish, basically. The idea that you can just pass a law and then expect everything to be fine is ridiculously naive and demonstrates how lacking in social awareness this person is. You've got to look at the fact that we still have a heteronormative society with many, deeply unpleasant and aggressive ideas about LGBTQ people still widespread in society. Like just earlier, I was reading about a woman in Texas who has been essentially placed on leave from her school for talking about her wife. That's nothing like major, just talking about something any other teacher might do, mentioning the fact that she has a partner. And the response is, oh, well, she's got a wife, she's a woman, it must be sexual, she must be radicalizing our kids. And, the usual scare stories and propaganda are circulating in the heads of the administrators. And the response is to kick out an LGBTQ person from their job. So that's just one example of how we still have a lot of work to do. Additionally, we have a fascist in the White House. We have a president who is supported by groups in society that want to see the current status, which isn't even perfect. In reverse, we want to see them move back and scale back the idea that people can be anything but heterosexual. And again, you revert to fascism. You play into the hands of fascists when you say that a movement for social equality and social progress has gone too far simply because you don't understand the reasons for it existing. I mean, S-Man, it's all very well him saying it's gone too far, but what does he know of the conditions and the stereotypes and the struggle that many queer people go through? What are the people who exist in society today? Their lives are not perfect, and it's actually quite insulting to say they have no legitimate concerns, or running out of legitimate concerns as though it's like a game. It's insulting to say that. The far right obviously are deeply anti-LGBTQ. They don't see it as part of the natural order of humanity. They don't see it as part of their evolutionary prospects and stuff. All rubbish, of course, but the idea that you can say that a movement for progress has gone too far plays directly into their arguments about how the traditional life has been destroyed and all the other nonsense they spout. But ultimately, it plays into their hands because it enables them to push their ideas of the gay agenda and stuff. Anyway, you support Nazis, or what am I saying? Saying you oppose Nazis is pointless if you think Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group against police/America. Black Lives Matter and other black awareness movements and stuff, they exist to demonstrate and highlight the injustice and stereotypes we face in society, and that exist in America, obviously in the West in general. There are still problems. In a country like America, which has segregation in living memory of many people, isn't going to be absolved of racism in a long time. Let's see. I mean, S-Man says Black Lives Matter literally celebrates murders of cops and white cops in particular. Like with a statement like this, it's just not something which holds any real freedom. I mean, firstly, the police. For someone to look at the situation in America with regular murders and atrocities committed by the police, regular acts of racism against black people by the police, and then the excuses made for that, and the outright justification. People who think it's okay for the fact that people are dead because of the police. But then someone like S-Man says, "Oh, well, it's their fault. They're the bad ones because they say that we want to." They maybe one or two people say they don't care when a police officer is killed. It comes down to our the praising of society in the justification of power structures, like the police, like law enforcement. Enforcement being the key word there. And not only is this statement of this idea that a movement which is it's not like it's a set organization, it's a movement. It's got lots of local factions. It's not got a hierarchy. There's no like president of Black Lives Matter or other local black-led community things. The idea that we want cops dead, that's not something which is said. And secondly, the fact that someone is looking at the racial situation in America and having this incredibly ridiculous view about it shows their lack of semblance when they're talking about this issue. If you're going into a discussion about race and race relations and racism in America, and this is your outtake, then what does that say about you? And yeah, once again, fascists love being able to talk about how black people are unsettling the nation and how they are a problem, and this sort of rhetoric against against groups that are raising awareness is perfect. They are able to present black people and black majority groups and stuff as violent and bad and evil through this language. And someone, the naive sort of young person like S-Man, just blindly saying, "Oh, they want cops dead, they want all this dead," and they're playing into the hysteria around them. That that massively helps the far right spread their information. It makes people afraid of black groups and then following that black people. Um, and you can't be just going into a conversation that's complex and clearly one-sided as race in America with the police and with racist institutions as the major problem, and viewing it as that Black Lives Matter is the problem. What's next? You supporting Martin's point that you condone or make excuses for the actions of the Trump administration, such as curtailing women's rights. Okay, so yeah, it's you're gonna say you oppose Nazis, and then go on to say that I'm a Trump fan, or I'm I don't mind Trump's actions. That's clearly demonstrating the far right sympathies and leniencies within you. You're sympathizing with someone who's actively moving and scaling back rights and civil liberties, and doing a whole host of terrible things in the name of supposed America and nationalism and stuff. And yeah, if you're supporting that, you're supporting the far right, their ideas. In response, S-Man says, Trump was not my pick for a presidency. Like, that's it's not anything major, is it, really? Like, no recognition of the conditions of it, of anything. It's just a statement. And again, he doesn't say that he opposes Trump or anything, but he wasn't my pick for a presidency. I suppose it's a non-answer, really, isn't it? Value free market capitalism over people suffering under it. Where are we going? Down even further. Free market capitalism is better than communism. End of. Now, you'll notice that in this I didn't actually say anything about communism. I just said value free market capitalism over people suffering under it. And then response is it's just better. There's no semblance. There's no recognition of the misery that entails under it. There's no recognition of the mass poverty or the environmental destruction or the foreign policy which ravages entire nations, and the homelessness and the poverty and the hunger and the waste of food and the ravaging of political and democracy and stuff. No, it's essentially just summed up as free market capitalism is better than communism. End of. It's the sort of response you expect from a child trying to win a playground spat, basically. But again, fascists, they are the last they're the last vanguard of capitalism. They're the people who take capitalism into its final stage by spinning all these pretense about freedom and civil liberties, curbing them, commodifying even more, and having a situation where the wealthy remain on top through the most authoritarian conditions they can, through complete deregulation, anything goes. And if the workers don't like it, that's tough because they're depressed to the point where they've been crushed and rendered unusable. And that ultimately comes to a free market where if you have a society where profits matter above all else, and anyone's free to pursue profits and capital, the wealthy are naturally going to commodify what they can and try and maintain their power. That's why we have mass incarceration, and that's why we have environmental devastation, because people naturally are going to, under this system, value profit more than anything else. They're not going to care about what happens to the numerous lives they've ruined to get to their wealth. They've just got their wealth, and they're okay. And fascists recognize this and say, oh, capitalism naturally is not going to be able to last forever. Growth is not endless on this planet. Therefore, we're offering you the chance to maintain your power. Just we're going to ramp up the control we have, ramp up workers' oppression, ramp up the free market, thus allowing corporations, for instance, to operate how they wish, like we saw in Nazi Germany, where deregulation made many companies millions off the back of binning existing regulations, removing public ownership of certain facilities, and imprisoning workers, leftists, and obviously the millions of marginalized people that were sent to die or work in the camp. So at first glance, it's just the petty right wing argument here. But when you look beyond that, it's a deeply flawed and ultimately fascist enabling argument, which is dangerous and shows that your opposition to Nazism is not as strong as one thinks. Anyway, where are we? See Antifa and other anti-fascist movements as the real problem for using violence, a real problem in quotation marks. Where are we? Okay. Antifa and fear black communities are domestic terrorists by using fear and intimidation to scare people into their circles. Well, I mean, I'd have to say, I don't think I know or I've heard of anyone who is scared into an anti-fascist movement where you're actively either taking down posters or doing work online or in communities or literally helping protect demonstrators against fascists or actively trying to initiate and defend against fascists in the street. That's not something that I would say people are scared into. But domestic terrorists is firstly utter rubbish. Like they're not there protecting people from the fascists. And yeah, fine, they're attacking fascists, but fascists by nature are the aggressors. They're people presenting a deeply hideous inane ideology upon society, one that has the erasure of marginalized people and of workers in direct suffering, one that erases LGBTQ and non-white and immigrants and all sorts of people who don't fit the superior envision of fascist ideas. I don't know why he brought up Black Lives Matter because I didn't actually mention that in relation to this point. It's not something that you can just gloss over as they're terrorists, especially in a country like America where people like Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela and Malcolm X all got regularly called back in the day. The race, the civil rights movement, they were taken as terrorists, and most people back then thought they were terrorists. There's this idea that someone is just a terrorist using violence and not standing down in the face of injustice is so cheap and easy to use, but at the same time plays into the fascist argument that if you fight for injustice, you're bad, but if you fight for justice, you're bad, and subversively trying to use public opinion to sway people away from the far left and trying to curtail the far left's ability to oppose fascists. Because the best fascists know that you need to get rid of the far left if you're to ascend fully. Hitler knew this, which is why he continuously, meticulously campaigned against the far left in Germany, so much as saying that they were left terrorists. And when the Reichstag fire happened, blamed that on the far left, had the Communist Party banned, and from there, cakewalked his way to power. And we obviously saw what happened after that. But you need an active, counter-fascist movement to oppose fascism and Antifa through their various techniques and stuff to do that. Much more so than someone sitting at their desk saying about how they're the real terrorists, and then at the same time saying how trans people are fake and LGBT has run out of legitimate concerns. Anyhow, you don't get in the top line. Saying you oppose Nazis is pointless if you do absolutely nothing to help marginalized people being targeted both in real life and on the internet by the far right. And in response, just quickly, if you're gonna sit by and watch as people who are in the crosshairs of the far right just abuse and harass your what they call acquaintances, what kind of person are you tolerating fascism? And this person, S-Man, he says, dealing with the far right isn't my responsibility, but I will call out extremists. that just the first sentence alone, dealing with power isn't my responsibility. I don't care what happens. Um, I don't see it as my, um, it's not. He doesn't see it as something he should be concerned with. Um, to involve himself in the well-being and protection of people who are being targeted by the far right. So just that alone shows that there's clear leeway being had for the far right. But the fact he puts it in quotation marks as well, that demonstrates that he doesn't even consider what's going on. He doesn't even consider that the far right are actually the far right, or are actually harassing marginalized people on the platform. I have a friend at Radical Robinette, or something like that these days, who's been kicked off of several of her accounts because he's been harassed by far right people, by people who wish to silence a trans person speaking out against issues in social politics and stuff. It happens all the time, and for someone to say that they're firstly not even put far right in quotation marks, so it's up for debate, but then secondly say it's not their responsibility, that's not good. That's pretty insulting, really, especially when you consider what's going on today in society right now. Then next up, let abusive, toxic people exist in your social circles. Similar one to the previous one. Yeah, if you're just going to let people who have these heinous ideas about society just sit in your friend group or in your community unchallenged, you're essentially saying we're okay with this far right idea. So naturally, that isn't something you can do, and then go on to say, "Oh, I oppose the Nazis." And F-Man says, "I pick out toxic," and then says a word I won't say. I will say it, toxic cunt. Not a very nice word, really, is it? Just, I don't understand how he can really say this when he said all of the stuff prior. Like, I don't think he'd be able to identify something who's toxic, given some of the stuff he said. Anyway, opposing Nazism is pointless if you think poor people deserve to be poor for their own choices. Again, it comes back to the idea that there's an inherent social order, and that the workers of the world have deserved to be the working class, not that wealthy for their own choices, and essentially ignoring the fact that the system we have, the system of capitalism, enables the wealthy to concentrate their power, enables the powerful to maintain their position in society. It's essentially built around the idea that there are classes, and that the top class, the higher class, is the one deserving of the power, that treats workers as a commodity to be exploited. And then the response you get, I advocate personal responsibility. You F up, you're on your own if you don't learn from the mistakes. Like if you can't see the highlighted far right ideas in this, then that I don't know how to help you, really. Like personal responsibility. Like if you understand what's going on in the far right, like and not far right in society right now, how can you say it's the responsibility of people who have had their benefits cut, or have had their jobs being lost by the capitalist system moving beyond their need of their labour, have their home repossessed, or natural disaster just ruin their life basically, or their healthcare need isn't addressing, but it's a free market, they can't even get onto accessing their healthcare. It's ridiculous to imply that a system as based on luck, essentially, as capitalism, is down to personal responsibility. It's just insulting, really. And then if you F up, you're on your own if you don't learn from the mistakes. What kind of view is that? Like, humanity does not have to be one where it's dog eat dog. We're better when we collectively look after each other. And who hasn't made mistakes? Who hasn't made errors? That shouldn't cost you your livelihood. You shouldn't be just putting people into bleak poverty just because they made a mistake. No one should. And the fact that people have to make these life-changing mistakes that cost them their livelihood is flawed in the first place. Why are people having to gamble with their lives to try and get by? Because capitalism is an inherently unfair system, and ultimately it comes down to the fact that the fascists think that there's a inherent order to society, that people at the bottom deserve to be there because of their social standing. You look at what Hitler and the Nazis did in Nazi Germany. They very much preserved the capitalist class and the wealthy. Obviously kicking out the undesirables, but for the most part, keeping that social order intact and suppressing worker movement to the point that they took things out of the workers' possession and gave them to private corporations. So yeah, this not only is this argument disgusting, but it's also something which is directly related to fascist ideas about the nature of humanity. Next up, you don't support Nazism. How we keep forgetting this, honestly. Saying you oppose Nazis is pointless if you think race is genetic and not a social construct. If you're gonna even like fathom the idea that race is something that anything but just something humans came up with, and not and think it's instead some fixed thing, then you're clearly helping and aiding far right views. And to his credit, he says, "I believe race is a social construct." Good. It's refreshing seeing something that's not going to be like some hideous beast. So yeah, it's good that he has basic grasping of some areas. That's what he said in that one. Back at the top, I keep saying your personality is pointless if you think there are only two genders and two sexes. I touched on this earlier, but yeah, if you're gonna even consider the idea that gender and sex are confined to a binary, and that there's not so much more to science and social construct and freedom of humanity, then you're just a fool, basically. And more dangerous than a fool, in fact, because you're helping the far right push their authoritarian ideas, biological order onto people. And S-Man in response says, there is only two genders and sexes. It's great grammar. People who haven't had a biology class need to F off, which is quite ironic because anyone who's looked at biology for more than like a preschool, primary school sort of education knows that sex and gender are more complex than just two options. For one, gender is a social construct, so it's not fixed for anything. It's just based on what we express ourselves with, basically. And sex, biological sex is not a fixed, binary. There's no like definite. Oh, this makes you a woman, this makes you a man. It's more complicated than that, and there's more than two. There's intersex, which is quite frequent and quite common, and it's still a thing. It's not some aberration. It's a legitimate thing that shows a binary is not the case. So it's ridiculous seeing people whip out this argument. And once again, the biology has existed for centuries. For as long as humanity has been around, it's not been a split binary. But it's the Nazis who saw their traditionalist conservative view of gender and of sex and stuff, and essentially erased it. They burnt down a center researching sexuality and gender. They removed the research in society. Literally, we lost it, and subsequently, we are further behind than where we ought to be now. So, for someone to be saying an argument of this nature, of such transphobic, bigoted, ignorant views, directly feeds into the far right view of the world. And it's silly to suggest otherwise. It's just tedious, really, but at the same time, really dangerous. Next up, supporting the thing you don't. How am I forgetting? Honestly, the thing you oppose Nazis is pointless if you think women's movements have gone too far and are anti-feminist. I should clarify that. I think women's women's movements have gone too far, and are also an anti-feminist So like, people online, I don't say, oh, I'm an anti-feminist. That's what I mean. I don't mean like that. There should be a comma somewhere. But yeah, if you're gonna, similar to with the LGBTQ rights and stuff, you're gonna, sit and seriously say that society has, there's no need for deconstruction of sexist ideas, then clearly helping people who want to return to a more more traditionalist, conservative time. And in response, S-Man says, feminism in the West was as useful as Karl Marx was alive. Uh, Feminism in the West was as useful as Karl Marx was alive. Well, Karl Marx was alive, so feminism in the West was useful. Going by this statement's logic, I think you may have misunderstood how similes work. But it's clear what he's trying to infer. Karl Marx wasn't useful alive, supposedly, so feminism in the West isn't useful. And it's quite ironic that he would say that, given that feminism is the reason, and women's movement the reason women vote, drive, and have abortions, and all the other things that we consider equality. But firstly, for him to ignore that sort of says a lot about his semblance and awareness of the issues facing society, but has faced society. Secondly, ignore the vast areas which feminism is still needed in, and the idea that we can, there's more to it than just, oh, they can vote, but they can get a job. More to it than that. There's social constructs and stereotypes, and there's still political barriers. There's still, not that same equality. There's the exploitation women have under capitalism, where we shift so much of emotional and home-based labor onto them, and they get nothing in return. They're expected to do it because they're a woman, so they are assumed to be the person running the household. And we profit, or capitalists profit off that. So in fact, it's exploitation and obviously sexist. But saying that movements to liberate women and men, because men benefit from the removal of patriarchal bigoted values as well. Saying that these ideas to remove is not useful directly plays into far-right ideas, because you're essentially saying that movements that help deconstruct the traditionalist views of women and men are useless and wrong. And that we again, plays into the idea that there's an order that men and women have to go into. And yeah, he's not saying this here, but by disregarding feminism as useless, he's really only helping the far right. You can see just how easily many anti-feminist groups in internet circles have been radicalized by the far right. You only have to look at what what's it called? How many gaming circles have ended up like now, and you can see just how dangerous just mindlessly bashing against feminism is, when it's just it's ridiculous. It's not useful anymore. It's served its purpose. Erase. Anyway, saying you support the Nazis is pointless if you use memes and jokes in quotation marks with a punchline targeting marginalized and laced in far right rhetoric. Yeah, if you're going to use jokes and stuff and language which directly plays into far right ideas and uses Nazi terminology, all you're doing is just normalizing fascist language and making it easier for fascism to be incorporated into discourse, because with people just making the quote unquote jokes, you can just have fascists whenever they get called out on things, start saying, oh, it's just a joke. It's just a joke. Well, we're saying this is the offensive thing, but it's just a joke, and no one is able to then focus on the jokes and the actual substance. I mean, never mind the fact that the joke is literally just, oh, this marginalized person is the joke is always punching down at the marginalized rather than punching up at the power structure. It's just basically normalizing far right arguments. S-Man's statement in response: memes and defensive jokes referring to the far right are harmless. Great job. This is visibly not true, because you can look at what happens to the Kestistan nonsense, which just eventually became another dog whistle and buzzword basically for the far right. We can look, and you even saw quote unquote moderate YouTubers using the Pakistan meme and having their audiences and themselves be pushed further and further right by their views. It's offensive jokes, like an offensive joke or edgy humor. It should be saved for stuff that maybe dark humor and stuff, and humor that still punches up. You can still be offensive and edgy. Just when it's just taking a joke out of marginalized people in the face of fascist rhetoric and stuff, that's clearly a problem. Especially when all you're doing really is making it easier for the far right to exist in your face, and especially S-Man, a white person, male, he's got all these privileges and comfort in society. He isn't in the crosshairs of the far right. He's not the sort of person they are going to be seeking to evade in society. For them to say all these jokes are harmless is pretty silly, really. Yeah, it's just silly trying to claim that rhetoric has no effect on the far right when it clearly does. You support the Nazis. Saying you support the Nazis. What am I saying? Saying you oppose the Nazis. Saying you oppose the Nazis is pointless if you believe that the Nazis of Nazi Germany were left wing. Yeah, if you're gonna seriously say the a party that was authoritarian, was defended the capitalist class, deregulated the economy, had the term privatization invented because of their policies, was left wing, then you're just helping the far right both smear the left with something that wasn't attached to them, and secondly, help them rebrand their ideas, help them rebrand Nazism as something else. By calling it something else and saying, oh well, it's not Nazis, that was left wing, we're right wing. And S-Man says, depends on definitions of left and right wing. Well, the left wing is not capitalist and right wing is, essentially. And the Nazis were capitalists and left are an opposition to capitalism and hierarchy, whereas the right see it as a natural produce of their ideas. But so no, it doesn't depend on the definitions, and if it does, then you're not exactly in a very good political place if you're just accepting a definition from any old person. It has to come from something more concrete than just typing in left and right wing on Google or something. It's harder and more complex than this makes it sound like. It's not subjective. The Nazis were right wing, so it's just wrong. And like I said a second ago, all you do when you say the Nazis were left wing is help fascists rebrand their ideas as removing the taint of the word Nazi from it, whilst also handing the Nazi stigma to the left unfairly, because it weren't. Next up, place friendships with bigots over the feelings and lives of the people the bigots are bigoted / unhelpful towards. Yeah, if you're going to sit with the knowledge of the fact that your friends or your associates have been bigoted or unpleasant or quite offensive with their behavior towards other people or even just about other people, and you sit and do nothing, you're placing you're placing your friendship and their bigotry over the lived person who is suffering from that. You're saying, oh well, you are this horrible person, but I don't care because I'm not affected. or I'm too apathetic to care about some other person. I've got this friendship. That's essentially once again allowing the far right to exist in your space. You're saying I'm not going to stand up for my brothers and sisters, my comrades, my friends, people in society, because I'm too lazy and rubbish to say no, that's not right. That you can't be my friend if you're going to treat people like this. And that's allowing fascists to then use that free passage to then exert upon the marginalized to use their power and stuff. S-Man says, we can separate a person from their opinions most of the time. I mean, it's typical right wing, just opinions, just the debate, no real passion to it. Because at the end of the day, for someone like S-Man, there's nothing to lose for these internet. It's not like he comes into it with the knowledge that there's people who actively want him erased, that there's people who actively seek out and harass him. As we see fascists marginalized, to trans people, to people of color, to queer people. And separating a person from their opinions is all very well and good. It's like, oh, what's your favorite color? Green. Or what's your favorite film? 25th Hour or something. It's beyond that when it comes to politics. And subsequently, for someone to say that fascists, or I mean, it's not made clear here. It's just the most, if you can't separate, I lost my line of thought here. If you're going to say separate a person from their opinions most of the time, what is that but a vagary? If someone is being offensive and bigoted and unpleasant, and you're too much of a coward and too naive and weak to say no, that's not right, that's not something you should be doing, you are aiding the far right. You're aiding fascism because you're saying to that marginalized person, I'm not going to speak up to you. I'm just going to stand by, and you're going to have to put up with that, the bigotry. And the end result of that is often the marginalized person having to leave the space. Next up, think you opposing an argument point of view, think suffering in society is inherent, not part of wider structural problems capitalism. Yeah, if it plays into the idea that the poor deserve to suffer, that power is reserved in the hands of the powerful because they've earned their place, they're just justified in being powerful, and that's the sort of nature of capitalism. Really, the idea that poor people are poor because of the free market never being wrong, and they just didn't work hard enough, and that's just a lie. And S-Man says, we don't have to suffer if we make better choices. That's the standard right-wing apologism for capitalism. Just not true of the capitalist system, where you aren't going to be earning much that you can actually spend, that isn't going into food, eating, and rent. And then let alone healthcare. How many Americans can't afford basic treatment at their hospital? How many Americans even afford to get to hospital because the ambulance is going to cost them too much in the first place? It's really insulting to say that people can make better choices when they're on minimum wage, they're having to miss meals to afford their rent, or having to weigh up paying for basic essentials in life, or enjoying it because human beings need that element of enjoyment. They need to be able to have a bit of happiness in life. Otherwise, they become really miserable. And this becomes even more gross if you consider the amount of people who have been the victims of the police or the army or Western imperialism, and then for someone to say, "Oh, well, you've made a better choice," then you would have suffered. when the choice was living in a country that the US bombed to get oil money. Like, it's just, completely naive of the conditions of society, and ultimately plays into the fascist view that the powerful deserve their power, and the people on the bottom don't. You opposing fascism is pointless if you refuse to change your behavior and called out by marginalized folk. Yeah, if you're just if someone like, a black person says don't use the N word, or an LGBTQ person says please don't use the F word, faggot, or if someone just says don't use this slur or don't make this joke, or please stop doing this, and you just refuse and say, it's not that problem, it's not my problem, you're just you feeling of speaking here, not being rational. What are you doing but making it again easier for the far right to use their clear slur words and harmful language and abusive language towards the marginalized? You're making it easier for abusive language to exist. The abusive will naturally be also made easier to exist. And it's just basic stuff. And then F-Man says, if marginalized, in quotation marks, people call me out, I'll hear their grievance. If it's BS, it's not worth listening to. Just the fact he phrases it like that alone just tell you like there's something seriously flawed in this line of thinking. Firstly, marginalized in quotation marks. I don't understand how you can put that there when it's clear. What we mean by marginalization is the idea that there's societal privilege and power differences and unpleasantries towards them. So, like black people, like LGBTQ people, like women, like the poor, like the disabled, all these people have had the societal prejudice opposed against them. Have had people think, oh, your race makes you inferior, your disability makes you inferior, your in fact you're trans makes you inferior. All these things make a person marginalized. And for someone to just come and say, oh well, you're not marginalized, and sort of putting it in quotation marks is very up for debate, is once again playing into the idea of the far right that these people aren't facing any injustice, and in a more ideal society wouldn't have that position in the first place. It's one step along the train, basically. Then in the next part, I'll hear their grievance as though, like, again, you've got to prove to me that I wronged you. When really you should be listening to them. You should be saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'll try to cut down on this," or at the very least, recognizing that maybe you're not going to be some arbiter of behavior. But instead, it's phrased as though he's got this ulterior belief system, and subsequently is in a position to discuss this sort of stuff. When like I said earlier, he's white, male, cis, straight. If there's someone able-bodied, if there's someone who's marginalized and saying, well, please don't say this, please don't use this language, who is he to say, oh, well, it's BS, it's not worth listening to? Maybe you should just listen to people saying this sort of stuff to you, and things would be better for those that you're listening to. You might not have a problem where marginalized people have to take themselves out of community because of the abusive, harmful language being used. Anyhow, so I believe we're coming up to the end. Opposing Nazism is pointless if you think the third world is poor because of Western superiority and not imperialism. Yeah, if you're gonna try and say that Africa or South America or Southeast Asia or even many parts of the world that aren't as wealthy as the West is today is poor because the West is just inherently better, you're ignoring the centuries of slavery, colonialism, imperialism, and capitalism that has been enforced upon the third world. So you're ignoring the complete devastation of African cultures, some of which have been permanently erased because the records have been lost through the colonial powers of Europe. You're looking at the onslaught of America in South America. The U.S. destroying countries like Chile and El Salvador and Guatemala. The last two that I know are in Latin America, not South America, but still destroying those nations to further, the West's wealth, America's wealth. You can look at America working with fascist, conservative, authoritarian movements in Southeast Asia and in the Middle East to impose greater control on resources like oil. Again, in the name of capitalism, the imperialism that says, yeah, we have the right to storm in and impose our own policies on you based on the fact we need to make money. That is why the third world is poor, and it's playing into far right arguments of superiority and white supremacy. If you're saying that no, it's because we're just better, it ignores the clear consequence and clear power divide between colonial powers and people they have subjugated. And then S-Man in response says, maybe it's due to religious stupidity and used to get with the times. Which, if you can't see how this doesn't play into far right arguments, just he's literally just calling third world countries stupid, not religious stupidity. Like, what does that even mean? You could look at the fact that colonial powers literally actually enforced their religion upon the nations they conquered and the regions they took control of, such as in Africa, for instance, where traditionalists and evangelical Christians have been teaching and radicalizing children of their religion and thus making things worse. For instance, the poor distribution of condoms in some parts of Africa was in part due to the abstinence-only sex education that evangelicals taught. The existence of radical Islamic groups in the Middle East, in many parts, came from American funding in their attempts to destabilize the region, or use them as their own armies to take over a nation leaning left or just leaning slightly away from America. To pretend as though it's just very unintelligent and not the wider structure of society is literally something that comes from a fascist view of superiority and of structuring society of some inherent order. There's no hierarchy between people. It's just some people are different, and there's no problems with differences. But colonialism comes in and seizes power over these people, and then makes the West wealth, and then centuries later we've still got that wealth because capitalism is a system that gives out, it takes in. And the West then says, oh well, we're just better, or not necessarily the West, but the far right say, yeah, we're better than the rest of you, and then someone like S-Man says, oh, they're just stupid. Yeah, fascism basically. Where are we now? He's opposing that option is pointless if you equate far left worker liberation to far right capitalist suppression. Yeah, if you're going to say that all violence is, if you're going to say that a far left movement of workers is the same as a far right hierarchy suppressing workers, then not only are you politically illiterate, but you're literally saying that the horrors of fascism in the past is the same as attempts by workers to try and free themselves. And yeah, it's pretty great. So if you imagine a revolution of workers to try and overthrow the state, that's not the same as a fascist movement trying to reinforce the state, trying to reinforce hierarchies and control. It's pretty gross to say otherwise, really. Yeah, and the Nazis obviously benefit from this because, as the party in the wrong, they wish to they don't obviously want to have the far left rising. So they're the biggest opposition to fascists. So it's in their best interest to smear the far left as dangerous and bad, and both sides are a bad choice because the party coming out of that worst is the far left. In a similar way to which we said earlier, I think S-Man says, the far left doesn't know shit about oppression. Getting a job isn't oppression. Making money isn't bad. I mean, I don't even know where to start with this, to be honest. Um, and when you say it doesn't know shit about oppression, as we read earlier, S-Man doesn't even consider some of the people who are oppressed to be legitimate in the first place, such as trans and non-binary people, such as the Q in LGBTQ. It's more complex than S-Man is saying, because he's naturally got this idea of oppression as just like this set specific thing, when in reality it's a multitude of things. And yeah, capitalism and the conditions that capitalism places on us is oppression. It's the forcing of workers to sell their labor for the capitalist profit off. Which interestingly, S-Man says, if you making money isn't bad, you're profiting off someone, you're exploiting their labor. In nature, you're extracting value from someone else's work to give to yourself. You couldn't have done what you did without their work. You've taken their work and given yourself more of it, and forced yourself to keep giving them more of it, because the workers don't agree to have their labor profited off. They accept that, otherwise they don't have access to the means of production, namely food, energy, water, housing, etc., and die. And no one wants to die, so they accept their conditions. So they don't, they're not agreed to have money made of them. They're not agreeing to be commodities, have their labor be commodities. They essentially are forced into it by the capitalists. So yeah, it is oppression. It is literally oppression. And also, the getting a job isn't oppression. Like for many people, for most people in fact, working and existing in the bottom end of society is what makes them far left. It's seeing the capitalist process in action, and realizing, oh, this isn't fair. My boss, is profiting off everyone in this restaurant labor. Yet he gets the nice, reward out of it, and we're on minimum wage. Or in America, you're not even on minimum wage, you're on below the living wage, because there's no proper minimum wage, and you're living off tips. What kind of a life is that, where you're having to rely on the generosity of other people to survive? Instead of a system that supposedly works, all because your boss is taking your the produce of your labor and living a cushy life with it. And once again, the idea that life is all about commodities, as expressed here, the idea that you can just commodify people's labor, is another tenet of fascism. The idea that labor is just a commodity to be made, to have profit made out of. The idea that workers aren't oppressed, or maybe they are oppressed. The fascists obviously know that they're oppressing the workers, but they're happy to dress it up as not oppression if it means winning over naive libertarians like S-Man. But certainly they're happy to pretend it's not oppression. And again, it's a word that has been used a lot by right-wing types, because they're happy for to mock the supposed inequalities they think don't exist. But no, it's absolutely true. Capitalism is an oppressive system, just based on either the workplace or the home or abroad, and it's not exaggeration to say that. Coming to the end now, if you're sick of sitting through this. See, all violence is equally bad and condemnable. Yeah, if you're going to tell me that a fascist movement targeting other marginalized and kind of remove people from society, and raising people from society and kicking out immigrants and stuff is the same as a person fighting back against that, simply because they're both violent, then you're a fool. And again, it plays into the idea that the both sides are bad, which ultimately says one side is the same as the other, which is obviously not the case. And if you're going to say that, you've essentially said that fascism has an equal, and that the equal is the opposition, which gives credence to the far right, because you're placing them at a pedestal with other political ideas, when in reality they're clearly the worst. Um, so yeah, it's not good to see violence as equal. Self-defense is not the same as being attacked. It's violence, the violence of capitalism is not the same as the violence needed to overthrow it. Anyhow, um, violence and little self-defense, i.e., someone pulls a knife on you and JFK them, not your feces getting hurt, is fine. Violence that's not is BS and illegal. Um, how do you respond to something like this? Um, Anti-fascism is literal self-defense. It is. Fascism is violence. It's an inherently violent idea, and the far right, they hold clear malicious intent with society. Their views about non-white people, their views about the people in society who aren't um, of their desire. What happens to trans people, LGBTQ people, non-white people, immigrants, the disabled? What happens to all those people under a fascist society? We've already seen what happens. They get shipped off, put in prison, imprisoned, killed, erased, burnt, their research burnt, their history erased, and generations lost. Um, so for someone to say that violence against fascists is illegal, so it's bad, is pretty childish. Really, it's just beyond um, immature. It's foolish and it's dangerous, and ultimately helps the far right because you're essentially saying that it's not justified for the far left to attack us. When yeah, it is. Because if you don't attack the far right, you're not actively opposing them in the street. You're essentially letting them grow their size and stature more and more. We've already seen what happens when you don't oppose them in the street as like much as you can. You get the SA and then later the SS, gaining momentum in Germany, able to exist more easily in Germany. Um, so yeah, it's just this view is ridiculous. Okay, you oppose fascism. Two left now. You oppose fascism if you think no, you oppose. For saying you oppose the Nazis and oh my gosh, how do I keep forgetting this? Saying you oppose Nazis is pointless if you think fascists can just be talked away, and subsequently that fascism is a debatable position. Yeah, if you're gonna sit and tell me that we need to talk about why fascism is maybe good or maybe bad at a table, then that's just another sign that you're not um, being great. Like you're essentially saying to people who are directly threatened by the fascists, oh, it's debate. We need to debate whether you deserve to exist. We need to debate to a trans person whether their biology is correct. Um, all the other hideous um, ideas that we have. Um, ideas that we have. The ideas that fascists have, they're not up for debate. They're just wrong. The idea that people are just in like there's some biological order to society that places the white cis male people on the top and the rest of it mainly discarded. It's just that's not on. Um, and similarly, if you're gonna honestly tell me that rating a fascist is the right way to go, then you're going to firstly you're going to lose, but secondly, what are you doing but opening your platform up to them? We've seen recently the Andy Warski streams where he has far right types on, and what do they achieve but give a massive audience to Nazis? They just let people advocate for their white supremacist, white nationalist societies to a large audience of impressionable, not that intelligent people. And yeah, I probably shouldn't say intelligent, a little bit ableist, but people who are quite impressionable, who are easier to coerce, being in those right wing circles. Um, and ultimately, they ultimately they um, ultimately the far right they benefit from these discussions because they have to be good markets, sell their ideas because how are you going to make how else do we explain we're fascist to people anyway. Looking at S-Man's response, he said neo-fascists have an eye kept on them, but until they make a move we can't stop them. I mean firstly I'd argue neo-fascist really like neo obviously um suggests the what's the new uh like words have lost me temporarily. Neo implies the fact that fascists have already existed, and that neo-fascists are just the next iteration of them. When no, they're still fascists now. So like it's not like it's not as though there's no fascists. It's just like a next step of the movement. It's still the same idea. So just call them fascists. Don't bother with all the prefixes. To have an eye kept on them, like you gotta. We're already doing that. We already have far left movements that are willing to oppose and fight and do activism against the far right, which you were moaning about earlier. So it seems a little bit confused here. Until we make a move, we can't stop them. Like, what kind of opposition is that? You're literally just saying, "Oh, we can't do anything till they're in a position that they can make a move." Which what do you mean by make a move? They already have made moves. They've already killed people. They've already got policies in serious discussion, or in some cases, literally in government. So no, this is just more stuff that is going to only help the far right. And stuff that ultimately, we can't make a move until, they make a move. Like, what good is that? The time they're going to make a move is when, they're in the position to have complete control. When they, when when someone like S-Man says, "Oh, now we're going to stop Nazis," it's going to be too late. What are you going to be able to do when they've got complete control of the government, where they've managed to shut down key elements of democracy and of fairness and equality? It's like it's so naive for someone to be saying this stuff, considering what fascists pose to society. Um, and ultimately, you're not like helping the opposition to the far right by saying stuff. And the final point, um, you opposing not saying you oppose Nazism is pointless if you think compromise and tolerance of the far right is if you're, it's sort of the sums up all of this. If you're gonna, think that you can just work with the far right or make compromises with fascists and stuff, that's not on because you're essentially saying that their positions can be, somewhere in between your position and their position. When that's not true, you can't be giving any ground to people who have no interest in fairly representing you or in being fair whatsoever. Um, and if you're gonna say that, then that's not good. Anyway, S-Man, to conclude, says, you have a biased definition of far right. I just don't really think so, S-Man. I mean, I know, to be fair, the word bias, and everyone has bias. No one's like completely, there's no thing as a person who can just be completely objective. But in terms of, the far right, fascism, yeah, it's, authoritarian capitalism, people who essentially there's no limit to how deregulated and how powerful you can be under the system. There's hierarchy and structuring and conservatism to uphold. Oh gosh. Um, so yeah, it's not that it's coming from me making it up. It's a firm thing. I'm not going to just call anyone far right, but that doesn't change that there are things that do fall under fascism, and there is a fascist presence in society today. Um, and then it ends with a crude joke. Again, talking about Karl Marx. Um, but it doesn't really even address the problem. But what I mentioned, so I'll just really leave it there to be honest. So ultimately, all of this can be summed up with someone unwilling to change their own actions to recognize the problems of society. Someone who is so confident in their own position, so falsely confident, that they're not noticing that a lot of their rhetoric has become quite far right. Again, I'll stress, S-Man, he's not a Nazi, he's not some horrible like piece of work, and you talk to him, he's okay, sort of. Um, but that doesn't change that his views in some areas, are gross. The idea that trans people are, fake, they're not biologically correct, that non-binary people are fake, that there's only like two genders, that feminism was pointless. Like, it's just not. These views, clearly come from a place of um, influence from the far right. And that is, that's not to say, in talking to Nazis and stuff, but it's hardly as though he can say that he's not been influenced by them, because his points in many areas are directly from the far right. So ultimately, I wanted to be focused on this because it was probably the one that went most into detail on like a lot of the points I made. Certainly more so than the odd comments I got, because pretty much he covered all the bullet points I listed in the main bit of the thread. Sadly, it didn't thread properly. And S-Man, if you do watch this, instead of making the response video you might make, or making the lol comment, or doing the your PC's got hurt, you're triggered, and all that nonsense, just stop and think about what's being said. Just take a moment to think, maybe there is a problem. Maybe Owen's not just making this up, and there is a major problem with fascism, rising far right groups in society. And try and self-reflect. Try and the next time someone says, "Oh well, not say this word," just think, "Oh yeah, I can maybe work on that." Maybe the next time someone says, "Oh, there's something deeply unfair with capitalism," think, "Yeah, well maybe we should consider that. Maybe we should look at the fact that there's a lot of suffering going on in the system right now. Be more empathetic, and ultimately just try and consider fact that society isn't the way you're portraying it to be in the set of tweets you've done here." I have to apologize for the quality of the audio. My earphones are new and they're not the best. So supposedly the audio is a bit quiet, according to a few people in the chat, which is a shame because I've spoken for quite a while and it seems a waste to have lost it all to this if it's not going to be in good condition. But yeah, I think that draws it to a natural conclusion, really. Thank you all for watching. I hope I've managed to draw your interest and stuff. But yeah, I'm done here. Hope to have some streams and stuff coming up. Want to also have a few debates at some point because I've not done one of them for a while. I want to talk about politics with someone. Who's not of the same political mind as me. But then also I want to talk to people who are. I want to have conversations and stuff on here. So like I said, thank you all